But first tonight, I can reveal that Liberal Leader Sussan Ley ghosted Jane Hume for days, ignoring her texts and phone calls before finally telling her she'd been dumped just 90 minutes before announcing her shadow cabinet. Sources close to Senator Hume told me that multiple texts and phone calls to Sussan Ley went unanswered, this for several days, while Ley was formulating her frontbench team. Sussan then finally rang Jane Hume and told her there was no role for her. This was an hour and a half before she fronted the press. The source told me it was completely ruthless. We've gone from people talking about Sussan facing a glass cliff to now watching her pull up the ladder behind her to ensure no woman can follow in her footsteps. Either Sussan thinks a woman's place isn't in the cabinet, or she doesn't like dealing with strong women. Pretty cutting comments there. Now, Jane Hume isn't the only senior coalition figure who was given the cold shoulder. Sussan Ley also did not respond to an approach from Senator Claire Chandler, who sent a text message saying that she'd like to continue serving in a senior position in the shadow cabinet. There was no reply. Today, Sussan Ley doubled down on her decision to dump or demote 4 of the most senior coalition women. And when asked about this today, she said she was promoting women who were younger in terms of political experience. Have a look at that strange remark.
Of course, Pete, I want to see more women come into our party, and I was able to announce women who are younger in terms of their political career, and I know that they're going to do very well too.
Younger in terms of their political career. Younger is a word you only use in relation to age. So perhaps she was about to say that she was promoting younger women and realised that wouldn't be a good look. It would be ageist and would reinforce a sexist, outdated view that women have no value to society if they're too old. Now, Sarah Henderson is 61, Jane Hume in her 50s, but Claire Chandler is 37, Jacinta Price, 44, and their ages are irrelevant. They are among the most high-profile and high-performing coalition women. When Parliament returns, it'll be an embarrassing sight to see these talented women relegated to the backbench. Instead, Sussan Ley has leapfrogged the likes of Giselle Captirian, who is only 3 votes ahead of Teal Nicolette Bowl in the recount. She might not even get into Parliament. If she does, she'll be on the front bench. But of course, she poses no threat to Sussan Ley. This shadow cabinet undoes the efforts to rebrand the Liberal Party as modern with a Liberal leader. And you couple this with giving the overqualified Dave Sharma a junior assistant ministry position when he probably should have been in foreign affairs. As Peter Credlin said last night, it's like leaving your best players in the change room.
I just don't think you take on an empowered and dominant Labor Party by leaving some of your best talent in the change room and giving the factional bother boys a reward.
And she's right. While there are a few good appointments, this is at best a mediocre team. It's shocking to think that Sussan Ley's shadow cabinet now has fewer women than either Scott Morrison's or Peter Dutton's had. Dutton had 10 women in his shadow cabinet and Morrison had 8, the same number Ley now has. And only a third of Ley's shadow cabinet are women. This is despite the fact she's often publicly argued for years that we need more women in Parliament and in senior positions. Take a look at some of those comments.
I want to say right here and now, we need more women in our party. We need more women in our party organisation. We need more women in this party room. As I said quite some time ago, I do want to see a 50% target for women. We need a 50% target by 2025, that's my view. And how we get there, of course, will vary. Where you encourage young women to get into the party, where you mentor them successfully, where you give them a platform to talk about their ideas, which might not be your ideas, and you have a system that really strongly supports them.
So the woman who argued for a 50% target now has only a third of her shadow cabinet being women. This is a case of clear hypocrisy. Now that she's in a position to elevate more women, instead she dumped or demoted 4 and has presided over the lowest number of women in cabinet or shadow cabinet for the Liberal Party since 2019. And boy, was she hammered on this today.
Yeah, let's look at your team. You demoted senior women, Hume, Henderson, Price. Why was that a good idea, given that, as you know, your party has problems with women?
Let's move to some of the decisions you've made on that shadow cabinet. For a party that's trying to rebrand itself with Australian women, why so few women in the shadow cabinet?
Look, 40% of my shadow ministry is made up of women, and across our party room more broadly,
not as many
Bridget,
as under
I always
Peter
want
Dutton,
to see
is that
more
right?
women.
Not as many under the former leader.
So that was on Channel 7 and the ABC, and she didn't have a better time over on Channel 9.
You need to win back women as well. They said Peter Dutton had a problem with female voters, but now you've deliberately reduced the number of women in shadow cabinet.
40% of my shadow ministry are women. Of course, I want to see more women in our party room every single day.
But you've reduced the number.
For me, as leader, that does... Well, Carl, as a woman leader, that sends a signal to women.
You champion for more women in Parliament, you champion more in Cabinet, but at the first chance you promoted men and dumped women. How is that anything other than personal?
That's commentary, Carl, and it's simply not how I see it. As I said, 40% of the shadow ministry are women. We've got great women.
Fact.
He did a good job there, Carl Stefanovic. Now, Sussan Ley also told Paul Murray last night that Jacinta Nampijinpa Price was very happy with her demotion to shadow cabinet.
I spoke to her before this appointment, Paul. She's very pleased to take it on.
Pleased? I mean, that's taking spin to the next level, because 3 hours earlier, Jacinta told Peter Credlin that actually she was very disappointed and that the shadow cabinet team wasn't appointed based on merit at all.
I'll be honest to say that there are probably some appointments that have not been predicated on experience or merit. But this is the team we have to work with, that we're working with going forward. And you know, I'm not going to lie and say that I'm not disappointed that I'm not within cabinet itself.
And this is the problem with politicians like Sussan Ley. Jacinta gave an honest answer. She's disappointed with the demotion, as she should be. And instead of acknowledging Jacinta's public position, Sussan Ley lies and insists Jacinta's very happy. And a politician junior to Jacinta, Kerry-Ann Little, has now been promoted to shadow cabinet. So the message it sends is that Jacinta, one of the top performers in the coalition, is not valued by Sussan Ley. It sends the message that talent and merit are not the key drivers of this shadow cabinet team. And those involved behind the scenes in this shadow cabinet include Alex Hawke, who was Scott Morrison's numbers man, also Lee's Chief of Staff, Dean Shakar, and I'm told Sussan also sought advice from Scott Morrison. Now, I put all of this that I've reported here to Sussan Ley's office, and her spokesman told me tonight that the opposition leader has spoken with every single one of her parliamentary colleagues several times since the election result and prior to the announcement of the shadow ministry. The leader has announced a team with enormous talent, and as she said this morning, every member of the party room has an important role to play. Suggestions that there were voices in the room trying to influence decisions are wrong. Now, clearly, Sussan Ley has created even more enemies than she had before with this shadow cabinet. And that's before she's been tested against the ruthless Albanese government. Deputy Leader Ted O'Brien has been making phone calls to try and calm everyone down, but it's not working. Because right now, Sussan Ley only has the support of half the party. 3 people who are believed to have voted for her, like my friend Holly Hughes, are no longer in the party room. They've left politics, yet they participated in the leadership ballot. Now, internally, I can tell you that coalition figures are discussing how long Ley will last. Some estimate that she has between 6 and 18 months as leader. The clock is ticking. Now, she could have used this shadow cabinet to unite the party. Instead, she's given power to factional players devoid of talent, and in doing so, has only succeeded in driving a deep wedge through the coalition.